Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. The film begins with two women named Amanda and Natalie saying goodbye to the camera as they are about to embark on a trip. Natalie's boyfriend, Chris, is recording videos of them. Chris seems excited about the trip since they are heading to visit his brother, Paul, who has decided to settle in Kiev. They pass through various cities in Europe until they finally reach Kiev, where Paul watches the travel videos and witnesses how crazy they are. Paul and Chris catch up. Paul tells Chris about his decision to settle in Kiev, saying he likes the amazing girls in the area who adore Americans. At the same time, Paul playfully expresses his hormonal interest in Amanda, but Chris says her boyfriend just broke up with her. Paul responds that this is perfect for flirting with her since she feels lonely and needs a fling to get over her old relationship. Annoyed, Chris then declares that he is too bad to have a chance with her, so Paul says he will leave her alone and asks Chris about the status of his relationship with Natalie. In response, Chris happily tells Paul he is about to propose to Natalie on their upcoming trip to Moscow. Paul is then surprised by his brother's revelation and congratulates him. After having fun together at a bar that night, they walk back home. Chris gives Natalie affection on the streets while Paul attempts to flirt with Amanda, hoping he can get something more with her, but Amanda laughs and tells Paul he has issues. He smiles and affirms this. In an alley, they encounter some rowdy men but wisely walk away. The next day, they have breakfast before leaving for the trip to Moscow. Suddenly, Paul comes to the table and excitedly asks about Chernobyl. Natalie responds that it's where the nuclear disaster occurred. Chris immediately realizes that Paul is planning to take them there, then declares that they will not change their plans to go to Moscow, but Paul still convinces them, saying they can enjoy a fun and adventurous trip to Chernobyl, and that an adventure tourism expert named Yuri will take them there. Amanda says the radiation levels in Chernobyl could be dangerous, so Paul insists they won't be affected since they will be taking a tour there for only a single day. After that, Paul asks everyone to vote on whether they want to go there. Amanda and Natalie raise their hands, leaving Chris no choice but to join them. After this, they head to Yuri's office, where they see his photos from his military days. Apparently, Yuri is a former military man. Amanda curiously asks him about his plans for the trip, and he shows them a video of Chernobyl, assuring them that the trip will be safe, explaining that this isn't his first time doing a tour of the city. Suddenly, a strange couple, Mr. Michael and Zoe, arrives to join them on the trip. Now that they are complete, they proceed. On the way, Yuri reveals that the nuclear disaster at Chernobyl was the result of a failed system test and that, after the disaster, Yuri believes nature took back its home. Later, they finally arrive at the border, where a military checkpoint stops them. Yuri then talks to the soldier, while another closely watches them. Moments later, Yuri returns and informs them there is maintenance work inside Chernobyl, so the soldier cannot let them in. Frustrated, Paul complains to Yuri that they already paid for the trip. This forces Yuri to take them in through an alternative route deep in the woods. Once they finally enter, Yuri shows them the lake. He puts his hands in the water and pretends to be grabbed by a monster beneath the surface, startling them. Shortly after, he shows them a dangerous mutant fish lying on the ground. Paul touches it, and it suddenly moves, making them smile in surprise. It turns out the lake is filled with mutant fish. At their second stop, Yuri takes them to Chernobyl's residential area, where thousands of people used to live. As they exit the van, they are in awe of the abandoned buildings and the amusement park. Yuri uses his sensor to test the radiation level and informs them it is now at a safe level. A rusty Ferris wheel catches their attention. Yuri explains that it was there for the spring celebration but never happened because of the evacuation. Before leaving the area, they take a happy picture in front of it. After that, they continue walking inside the abandoned buildings. The structures are in complete disarray, while some areas are filled with darkness. As they exit again, they quietly observe everything. Yuri then declares that nature has truly taken over the place. For the last portion of the trip, Yuri takes them to the abandoned residential area. A decomposing dog corpse greets Natalie at the entrance, but they still ignore it and continue walking inside. Natalie then asks if there are other animals in the area, and he replies that it is unlikely during the day. Moments later, they take a look inside one of the abandoned apartments. Michael tries to grab something in the apartment, then Yuri warns him to leave it alone as it is contaminated. Yuri takes them to the rooftop of the apartment, where they can see the exploded Chernobyl reactor. He explains that the radiation level in the reactor is too high, so they need to wear suits to enter it. While the group takes pictures from the terrace, Yuri scans the area. Something resembling ashes lies on the ground, and he tries to check it with his hands. Presumably, that has high radiation, so when he pushes it, a loud noise from outside draws their attention. Yuri then proceeds to carefully check the building while instructing the group to stay still. Suddenly, a huge bear enters the room, scaring them. After the bear passes, the agitated group decides to leave Chernobyl. They run to the van and panic as Yuri hurriedly urges them into the vehicle. He jokes that there's no extra charge for bear attacks to calm the group. When Yuri is about to leave, the engine won't start. He then checks the problem and finds a chewed cable, possibly by some creature. Yuri tries to call for help on the radio, but the connection seems to be failing. Shortly after, darkness begins to dominate the place. Yuri still tries to reach someone on the radio, but to no avail. Realizing they are trapped, Paul begins to blame Yuri for taking them there. Meanwhile, Chris and Natalie blame Paul for the idea to change plans. Amanda intervenes, suggesting there must be someone from the travel agency who knows they are there. To their disappointment, Yuri reveals that he works alone, so no one will rescue them. Mr. Michael suggests walking to the checkpoint, but Yuri says it is 20 kilometers away and dangerous to walk around the area at night. Suddenly, they start hearing creatures screaming, making them nervous. Yuri grabs his weapon and goes to check. Chris decides to follow him, while Paul also opts to accompany his brother, but Chris angrily tells him to stay behind as he is messing everything up. Moments later, they start hearing gunshots, so Paul runs to check on his brother. Shortly after, Paul arrives with Chris, who is gravely injured from some bites and screams in pain. They ask him what bit him, and he replies that he couldn't see them, but he knows many creatures bit him. He also informs them that the veteran Yuri was taken in the attack. Suddenly, a pack of dogs attacks the van, agitating them again. Fortunately, the dogs leave them alone after a while, but now the van's battery dies, and the lights go out, so they use their phone's flashlight while treating Chris's wounds. After that, they remain in the dark, cold van until morning arrives. When the sun rises again, Paul tries to contact Yuri using the radio, but unsuccessfully. Realizing they need him to get out of this situation, Paul, Amanda, and Michael decide to leave the van to look for him. After wandering for a while, they hear Yuri's radio and find it along the basement stairs. This means something attacked him, so Amanda says they need to go back, but Michael insists on checking if he is still alive. Thus, they all descend together into the basement to find him. There, they find a trail of blood, so Amanda suggests he must be dead. However, Michael says they need his weapon. As they follow the blood trail, they finally find Yuri, but his body is now completely mutilated by bites. They then attempt to find the weapon on his body. Suddenly, they hear a creature approaching, making them immediately hide while the unknown creature devours the fallen body. Amanda slowly crawls towards the weapon. Upon grabbing it, the sound alerts the creature, and it immediately runs outside, where Michael and Paul lock the door. The three of them then run back to the van. They tell the others that Yuri is dead and they need to leave immediately, but injured Chris can't walk, and carrying him will take too long to reach the checkpoint, so Chris instructs Paul that they need to seek help at the checkpoint and come back later. Meanwhile, Amanda glances at the camera and finds a creature in the photo taken in the apartment. Chris and Natalie decide to stay alone in the van, while Paul, Amanda, Zoe, and Michael walk a long distance to seek help. On the way, Paul expresses his guilt for putting his brother in danger, but Amanda says he needs to focus on saving his brother. Shortly after, they find an abandoned car garage and search for something they can use to fix the vehicle. While exploring, they find a bus with some bullet holes. A previous group that was touring must have been attacked by a creature there as well. Paul and Amanda rummage through the bus and find a broken weapon, a flashlight, and the remains of a guard who appears to have been eaten by the creature. Meanwhile, Michael finds a cable that can fix the van, so Paul calls Natalie and informs her that they are on their way back to fix the van. Suddenly, a pack of wild dogs chases them, making them run as fast as they can. Shortly after, they come across a river with a fragile bridge. Zoe nervously walks onto the bridge and ends up falling. Then Michael immediately jumps into the water to bring her back to the bridge. Suddenly, the mutant fish grab him, but fortunately, Amanda pulls him back to shore in time, although he still suffers some minor bites. In the end, the dogs cannot chase them across the river as they manage to cross it successfully. Time passes, and night falls, and they are still searching for the vehicle's location. While speculating about the creatures in the area, they suddenly hear one of them scream, so they hurry to find the van, but it is nowhere to be found. They wander around the area and find it destroyed and covered in blood. They find Natalie's phone, where they watch her and Chris's last moments in the video. Chris decides to propose to Natalie in the van instead of in Moscow, thinking he may not make it out alive. Suddenly, a creature breaks the van window and attacks the helpless couple, while the video abruptly ends. Paul is completely devastated but still determined to find his brother. Suddenly, they hear a scream from somewhere. Paul then desperately follows the sound, and the others quickly follow him. Shortly after, they find traces of blood in an abandoned building, believing it to be Chris's. As they scour the dark building, they spot a creature standing still, which scares them. As they run, they finally find a frightened Natalie, but she is traumatized and cannot speak about Chris. Michael has taken a map from the wall, and as they exit, he tries to chart a way to the checkpoint, but the agitated Paul doesn't want to leave without finding his brother. Michael then takes his weapon and calms him down, saying they will come back to find his brother. Thus, they decide to return first to the checkpoint and seek help. As they walk following the map, they near the nuclear reactor and spot a sinister child standing still. They slowly approach the child, trying to speak to her. While they are busy dealing with this, an unknown creature grabs Natalie and drags her away. They immediately run down the stairs, but she is already gone. While wandering around, a group of creatures slowly approaches them. They run again in fear and reach a locked door of the nuclear power plant, then force it open and enter. They descend the stairs and enter the heavy door. When Paul closes the door, the creatures immediately grab Michael, leaving not a single whisker behind. Zoe frantically cries over the loss of her boyfriend, but they have no choice but to keep finding a way to survive. Shortly afterward, Paul finds a body lying on the ground and, thinking it is his brother, tries to touch it. However, it is actually a creature that scares them. Its screams alert the other creatures, and they chase them once more. They flee until they reach a staircase and climb up it. Unfortunately, the creatures catch up to them and grab the defenseless Zoe, giving her no chance to escape. Meanwhile, Paul and Amanda continue running through the dark corridors of the building. They soon reach the nuclear reactor, and the high radiation level causes their skin to start burning slowly, so they immediately rush outside, where Amanda finds Natalie lying dead. Amanda then embraces her dead friend, crying. As they begin to walk again, creatures leap on them from behind. They then react as best they can, and Amanda grabs a metal pipe and fights the creature. Then she helps Paul get rid of his enemy. As soon as they manage to escape, they continue walking until they find heavily armed soldiers outside. They ask the soldiers for help, but instead of helping, the soldiers shoot Paul and kill him, believing he is already a creature. Then the soldiers take Amanda. Shortly after, she is on a stretcher being pushed by doctors in radiation suits in the hospital. The chief doctor asks the other doctors where she was found. Upon learning that she was found near the reactor, he says they cannot let her go, since she has witnessed everything. The creatures in Chernobyl are mutants, changed by radiation, and they are being kept secret by the government, and because Amanda witnessed such a secret, the doctors take her to a dark room. Unfortunately, the creatures inside the room immediately grab her while she screams desperately for help.